Have you ever had a day where everything goes wrong, no matter how hard you try? Benny knows exactly how that feels. His life is full of clumsy mistakes, unexpected surprises, and moments of luck that turn everything around. Today, we'll step into Benny's world, experience his chaotic day, and along the way, learn some daily use English expressions and vocabulary, in a fun and natural way. Let's see where his unpredictable journey takes him. Benny's chaotic life. In a small, messy apartment, the alarm clock rang, but Benny, a clumsy, kind-hearted man, kept snoozing it. Suddenly, the clock fell on his face. Panicked, he jumped out of bed, tangled himself in his blanket, and stumbled straight into the bathroom door. After a chaotic struggle with his too tight shirt, and a rebellious sock that refused to stay on, Benny finally rushed out, only to trip over a cat, sending his breakfast flying. The toast landed perfectly in his pocket. Just as he stepped out of his apartment, sighing at his disastrous morning, reality hit him. He needed a job. His pockets were nearly empty, and his stomach growled in agreement. Brushing off the dust from his already worn-out coat, he took a deep breath and set off, hoping that today would bring him some luck. Wandering the streets, jobless and desperate, Benny spotted a help-wanted sign at a fancy restaurant. He entered with confidence, but his torn coat got caught in the door, making a dramatic entrance as he spun in. The strict restaurant manager eyed him suspiciously, but gave him a chance as a waiter. His first task: serving an elegant lady. Benny, trying to be sophisticated, held the tray too high, knocking over a chandelier, which landed on the grumpy rich man's table, ruining his soup. Chaos erupted. Benny, in an attempt to fix things, grabbed a cloth to clean up, but it was the tablecloth, sending everything crashing down. Fired within minutes. Wandering the streets, hungry and hopeless, Benny found a mysterious note fluttering in the wind. He chased it in an exaggerated ballet, dodging moving carts, stepping into wet cement, and barely avoiding a policeman's baton. Finally, he grabbed it. It was a lottery ticket. Excited, Benny ran to the lottery office, only to be stopped by a beggar girl, shivering in the cold. He hesitated, then smiled and handed her the ticket. She beamed, and Benny walked away, proud. As he turned the corner, the girl chased after him. Her father, a wealthy businessman, was watching. Impressed by Benny's kindness, he offered him a job as his assistant. Now, dressed in a fancy suit, Benny sat at a big desk, struggling to sharpen his pencil with a fork. He glanced up, smirking as if sharing an inside joke with the world. After messing things up at the office, Benny, now a well-dressed man, stepped outside, accidentally stepped into a puddle, and splashed a policeman. The chase began again. Now, let's explore some useful English expressions from Benny's eventful day. So, first we have, hit the snooze button, which means pressing the snooze button on an alarm, to delay waking up. Many people do this when they feel too tired to get out of bed. For example, I kept hitting the snooze button this morning and almost missed my bus. Next we have, tangled up in, which means getting caught or twisted in something. This often happens when handling wires, clothes, or blankets. For example, I got tangled up in my bedsheet while trying to get up quickly. Then there is, stumble into, which means to trip and lose balance, or to accidentally become involved in something. This can be physical, like bumping into something, or figurative, like getting into a situation unexpectedly. For example, I wasn't paying attention and stumbled into a chair in the cafe. Or, he never planned to become a teacher, but he stumbled into the job and ended up loving it. Another fun phrase is, a rebellious sock, which is a playful way to describe a sock that keeps slipping off no matter how many times you fix it. For example, my rebellious sock kept sliding down inside my shoe while I was walking. Then we have, trip over, which means to fall because you stepped on, or hit something. Unlike stumbling, tripping always happens because of a specific obstacle. For example, I tripped over my little brother's toy and almost dropped my coffee. Now, let's look at jobless and desperate, which means someone is unemployed and urgently looking for work. For example, after finishing college, I was jobless and desperate, applying for jobs everywhere. Next we have, make a dramatic entrance, which means entering a place in a way that attracts attention, either on purpose or by accident. For example, she made a dramatic entrance at the party by arriving late in a bright red dress. Then there is, eye someone suspiciously, which means to look at someone with doubt or mistrust, often when something seems unusual. For example, the cashier eyed me suspiciously when I kept checking my pockets for my wallet. Another useful phrase is, knock over, which means to accidentally hit something and cause it to fall. For example, I knocked over my glass of water while reaching for my phone. Now, let's talk about chaos erupts, which describes a situation suddenly becoming chaotic or out of control. For example, the moment the teacher left the classroom, chaos erupted, as students started shouting and playing around. Next is, send everything crashing down, which means making everything fall in a loud and messy way. For example, I pulled one book from the shelf, and sent everything crashing down. Now, let's look at wander the streets, which means walking around without a clear destination, often just to pass time. For example, I had nothing to do, so I wandered the streets, looking at shop windows. Then, we have fluttering in the wind, which describes something moving lightly in the air. For example, my shopping receipt slipped out of my bag and started fluttering in the wind. Another important word is dodge, which means to quickly move aside to avoid something. For example, I had to dodge a cyclist while walking on the footpath. Now, let's talk about step into, which can mean literally stepping into something or getting involved in a difficult situation. For example, I stepped into a puddle right before entering the office, and my socks got wet. Next, we have hesitate, then smile, which describes pausing before making a decision. For example, he hesitated, then smiled before finally agreeing to go on the trip. Then there is chase after, which means to run or hurry behind someone or something. For example, I had to chase after my bus this morning, because I left home late. Another useful phrase is impressed by someone's kindness, which means to admire someone for the good actions. I was impressed by his kindness when he gave up his seat for an elderly lady on the train. Now, let's look at struggle to do something, which means, to have difficulty doing something. I always struggle to open tight jar lids. Next, we have, share an inside joke, which means having a joke that only certain people understand. Whenever my best friend and I hear that song, we laugh, because it's an inside joke between us. Then, there's well-dressed, which means wearing nice, formal clothes. He was well-dressed for his job interview, in a crisp suit. Now, let's talk about, step into a puddle, which means to accidentally step in water on the ground. I stepped into a puddle on my way to school, and had to walk with wet socks all day. Finally, we have, the chase begins, which is a fun way to say that someone is being pursued. As soon as I took my little cousin's toy, he started running after me, the chase began. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed Benny's story and learned something new. The phrases we learned today will help make your English sound more natural and fun. Try using them in your daily conversations, and stay tuned for the next video.